pasa María Eugenia, o sea, pasa este orden, mira. Yo presento, entonces las palabras de bienvenida las da primero María Eugenia, después Renzo, entonces yo damos la palabra de bienvenida a cargo de María Eugenia. Muy buenos días a todos. Les damos la bienvenida a este seminario científico organizado de la mano de la Universidad Industrial de Santander, Colciencias y todas las autoridades de Francia acá en Colombia. Primero que todo, vamos a leer el orden del día. Vamos a tener unas palabras de bienvenida a cargo de diferentes personas acá presentes. La primera que todo es María Eugenia Mejía, jefe del área de internacionalización de Colciencias. Posteriormente va a realizar una intervención Renzo García, gestor del Programa Nacional de TICs de Colciencias. Después nos va a acompañar Enrique Sánchez Albarracín, delegado de la Embajada de Francia en Colombia. Después Patricio Espinosa, de la Secretaría de los Programas de STIC y MATH-AmSud. Y por último, Carlos Enrique Vecino Arenas, de acá de la Universidad Industrial de Santander.
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Para mí es un honor estar aquí en esta hermosa ciudad de Bucaramanga con todos ustedes. En nombre del director del Departamento Administrativo de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación Colciencias, el doctor Diego Hernández, y en el mío propio, quiero extender un saludo muy especial a todos los aquí presentes y en especial al señor Carlos Enrique Vecino Arenas, de la Universidad Industrial de Santander, a la señora Andunset, presidenta de la Secretaría del Programa STIC y MATH-AmSud, al señor Patricio Espinosa, de la Secretaría de los Programas STIC, MATH-AmSud, al señor Enrique Sánchez Albarracín, agregado de Cooperación Universitaria de la Embajada de Francia en Colombia. De igual manera, agradecemos la presencia de los coordinadores franceses y colombianos de las diferentes entidades que permitieron hacer este evento posible y les doy la más cordial bienvenida a la ciudad de Bucaramanga, la ciudad bonita y también llamada la ciudad de los parques, y a este seminario científico titulado Computación Avanzada entre América Latina y Francia para el programa STIC y MATH-AmSud. Es para todos nosotros muy estimulante tenerlos el día de hoy reunidos en este seminario que nos permitirá fomentar el conocimiento en temas que cada vez van ganando importancia en un mundo más conectado y más ligado hacia la tecnología. Esperamos que este espacio lo tomen los asistentes como una herramienta para generar nuevas ideas de cambio en el país y la región, para demostrar que la tecnología cada vez tiene más injerencia en retos y desafíos sociales, económicos y culturales a los que nos enfrentamos día a día en el mundo y que al mismo tiempo nos ofrecen una solución duradera y estable en el tiempo. Agradezco su asistencia a este seminario, ejecutado gracias al apoyo y por medio del trabajo conjunto entre las instituciones de estos dos países. No siendo más, le quiero dar la bienvenida y la palabra a Renzo, gestor de las tecnologías de la información y la comunicación de Colciencia. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
Yo creo que, no sé. ¿Qué se hizo con eso? ¿Es esa, cierto? Sí. Yo, si quieres, la voy pasando. Ah, sí, sí.
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Renzo García. Soy el gestor del programa de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación en TIC de Colciencias. Es un programa nacional estratégico encargado de definir y ejecutar la política pública en ciencia, tecnología e innovación para el sector TIC de Colombia. Les voy a contar un poco cuáles han sido nuestros resultados y algunas metas que hemos logrado en los últimos 8 años. Hemos logrado la firma de 12 convenios especiales de cooperación con el Ministerio de la STIC y el Ministerio de Educación con el fin de articular todos los esfuerzos públicos en cuanto al sector TIC se refiere y en especial al tema de talento humano. Gracias a estas alianzas hemos logrado financiar más de 586 proyectos de ciencia, tecnología e innovación para el sector TIC, invirtiendo alrededor de $200 millones en los últimos 8 años, logrando así una retribución de $40 millones como contrapartida de las instituciones que han sido beneficiarias de estos ejercicios de cofinanciación, logrando así incrementar adicionalmente la inversión privada en actividades de ciencia, tecnología e innovación específicamente para el sector TIC. Adicionalmente, gracias al trabajo que hemos logrado hacer, se elaboró el Plan Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación para el sector TIC 2017-2022 a raíz de un ejercicio de prospectiva que realizamos. Nos trazamos esta hoja de ruta donde Colciencia, si bien es quien lidera el plan, pues no es el único actor responsable de este. Tenemos diferentes ministerios, actores del Sistema Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación, los cuales son los encargados de ejecutar esta política y que nos traza cuál es la ruta para nosotros desarrollar la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación en el sector TIC. Gracias a este plan hemos establecido 3 perspectivas con 21 estrategias para su ejecución. La primera de las perspectivas es la de soporte, es donde queremos conformar la base de la investigación, el desarrollo tecnológico y la innovación en nuestro país. Gracias a esta perspectiva hemos logrado la creación de un tanque de pensamiento en TIC para Colombia, hemos logrado la creación de centros de excelencia y apropiación, uno en Big Data y otro en Internet de las Cosas. También queremos dejar como base el talento humano para el sector, en el cual se convierte pues en el principal capital para nosotros. En la siguiente perspectiva, que es la perspectiva de I+D+I, es donde nosotros queremos fortalecer esos procesos de investigación desde la academia, lograr que la academia tenga cada vez más unos ejercicios mucho más maduros de nivel internacional y que sean mucho más pertinentes para nuestro sector. A partir de allí es donde nosotros fortalecemos estos grupos de investigación, los centros e institutos de desarrollo tecnológico y demás actores reconocidos en la política, actores de Colciencias. Al final, la perspectiva de ciclo final es donde nos centramos en la industria, es donde logramos articular esos procesos de investigación con el desarrollo tecnológico y la innovación que tiene la industria, y es donde logramos llevar al mercado estas nuevas tecnologías que podemos estar desarrollando en este ejercicio. Este plan estratégico tiene unos sectores priorizados. Estos sectores son en la agroindustria, salud, turismo, energía y hidrocarburos, gobierno en línea, justicia y defensa. Consideramos que estos son los sectores que mayor profundización y mayor penetración podrán tener de las nuevas tecnologías y de los ejercicios de investigación. Pero así como tenemos unos sectores estratégicos, también tenemos unas líneas orientadoras o tecnologías que nosotros definimos gracias a ese ejercicio de prospectiva, que son las que deberíamos trabajar en un horizonte 2017-2022 en Colombia, y tecnologías bajo las cuales, gracias a los procesos de investigación y desarrollo tecnológico, deberíamos empezar a cerrar la brecha que tiene Colombia con esos otros países donde nos llevan un poco de ventaja en cuanto al desarrollo de estas nuevas tecnologías. Para nombrarlas simplemente de manera general y por áreas, estamos hablando de computación centrada en personas, estamos hablando también de sistemas inteligentes, Internet de las cosas, analítica de datos, TIC para el sector salud por ser uno de los principales consumidores de alta tecnología, sociedad digital, TIC para la educación, ingeniería de software y arquitecturas de TI, infraestructura y seguridad TIC y sistemas autónomos de impresión de impresión 3D. Esto es nuestro mapa, nuestro roadmap en el que queremos centrar nuestros procesos de investigación y desarrollo tecnológico, y para eso lo que hacemos es abrir convocatorias públicas e invitaciones públicas para financiar proyectos con el fin de convocar a los actores del ecosistema para que elaboren procesos de investigación, desarrollo tecnológico e innovación y lograr tener un desarrollo más sostenible en nuestro sector. Para eso tenemos unas capacidades, tenemos alrededor de 74 grupos reconocidos en Colombia. El reconocimiento que otorga Colciencias a estos grupos de investigación, 7 están en la categoría más alta que podemos brindar y 16 en la siguiente. Ahí están y se están investigando en estas temáticas que tenemos allí. Es por eso que no solo queremos que se queden en los procesos de innovación, en los procesos de investigación, queremos llevarlos un poco más a la innovación. Colombia está ubicado en el 5º lugar de Latinoamérica en el escalafón de Global Innovation Index, y 63 a nivel mundial. Si bien en los últimos años hemos venido fluctuando en ese escalafón del 63 al 65, al 60, queremos a través de estos procesos, a través de este plan estratégico, orientar un poco más nuestros esfuerzos para poder subir en este escalafón. Es por eso que existe el Programa Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación para el sector TIC, y este es nuestro mapa. Obviamente por el tiempo no puedo contarles mucho más, pero el plan completo tiene todo un diagnóstico del ecosistema nacional del país en cuanto al sector TIC, y tiene las estrategias, cada una de las que les hablé allí, bien definidas para que lo puedan consultar en la página de Colciencias. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Damos el uso de la palabra al señor Enrique Albarracín, por favor.
Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a Colombia para los que llegan de países extranjeros, y bienvenidos a Bucaramanga, que se está convirtiendo para nosotros un poco en una capital científica de Colombia. Yo me llamo Enrique Sánchez Albarracín y soy el agregado de Cooperación Universitaria y Científica de la Embajada de Francia aquí en Bogotá, en Colombia. Quisiera agradecer primero pues, a nuestros anfitriones, a la Universidad Industrial de Santander por recibirnos aquí y especialmente a su director de Relaciones Internacionales, Carlos Enrique Vecino Arenas, y también a Carlos Jaime Barrios, que está por allí, que es uno de los grandes movilizadores de un gran apoyo para nosotros aquí, científico, en la Universidad Industrial de Santander, y Amparo Caballero, que seguramente han visto los participantes, que es la directora de la Alianza Francesa y que nos ha apoyado también mucho aquí para la organización de este evento. Hace un año nos encontrábamos en Río de Janeiro en la reunión STIC y MATH-AmSud, y cuando dijeron qué país va a organizar el próximo encuentro, pues levantamos la mano con la persona de Colciencias y dijimos, bueno, pensamos enseguida que iba a ser en Bucaramanga, aquí porque justamente el tema mismo, estos encuentros regionales STIC y MATH-AmSud siempre vienen con un seminario científico adosado, porque es importante que los técnicos, los administrativos de los programas pues vean y se encuentren también con los científicos, y como el tema de este año eran precisamente las TIC, pues dijimos qué mejor lugar que la Universidad Industrial de Santander, y espero que las personas que vienen de fuera pues disfruten de esta visita a Bucaramanga, a la UIS, al Parque Tecnológico de Guatiguará, para ver concretamente lo que se está haciendo aquí en esta universidad y en esta ciudad. Para nosotros, la Embajada de Francia en Colombia es muy importante pues afirmar, digamos, la presencia de Colombia dentro de nuestra cooperación regional, y es un esfuerzo que estamos viniendo haciendo desde hace algunos años y más precisamente, más fuertemente en los últimos meses. Aquí estamos tratando también de estructurar una comunidad científica colombo-francesa que ya está en marcha a través de la creación de una asociación colombo-francesa de investigadores que se llama Colifri, cuyos miembros estarán presentes estos días, van a llegar a partir de esta tarde para también reunirse con ustedes. Estos programas STIC y MATH-AmSud son programas que ya tienen más de 10 años y 12 años, y que ilustran bien cuál es finalmente el interés de crear redes. La investigación cada vez más funciona a través de redes de investigadores, y le debemos a estos programas, digamos, la vigencia de estos programas, el éxito que han tenido, vienen de, bueno, primero la implicación, por supuesto, de los investigadores, de los centros de investigación, el hecho de que este programa dispone también de una secretaría técnica en Santiago de Chile, aquí representada por Patricio Espinosa, que va a tomar la palabra también después de mí, y que en cada una de las embajadas de los diferentes países, pues las personas responsables de la cooperación científica en relación con las agencias de investigación de todos los países, de los 9 países, ¿no?, que forman parte de estos programas, pues estén activos. Esto creo que ha permitido, si bien recuerdo, pues configurar una red de más de 2.000 investigadores que está pues estrechando los lazos entre los dos países, y los programas STIC y MATH-AmSud son programas que sirven de palanca para lanzar cooperaciones, pero estas cooperaciones no se terminan después de los 2 años de financiamiento de estos programas. Y lo que estamos trabajando todos juntos, las embajadas, las agencias de cooperación científica, es realmente hacer que estos programas pues sean sustentables, duren en el tiempo y que permitan pues atender algunos de los grandes desafíos científicos de los tiempos actuales. Pues también quisiera felicitar a todos los participantes que están aquí, supongo investigadores, estudiantes, no sé si hay estudiantes de la UIS aquí, ¿sí? ¿Pueden levantar la mano para...? Sí, pues muy bien, entonces les felicito por venir a este encuentro y espero que puedan dialogar con los investigadores que vienen de Francia, pero también de Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, Brasil, de todos los países. Algunos, infelizmente, tuvieron algunos problemas para venir, creo que habrá algunas sesiones de videoconferencia, pero por eso escogimos la UIS, porque sé que son muy buenos con la tecnología y que no habrá problemas para que puedan participar también a distancia. Bueno, pues les dejo con este saludo de bienvenida. Mañana por la mañana, a esta misma hora, estará el embajador de Francia presente para la inauguración de la sesión de mañana y que también les transmitirá entonces las palabras de la Embajada de Francia aquí en Colombia. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Enrique. Damos paso de apertura, por favor, a Patricio Espinosa. Muchas gracias.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días a todas y a todos. Me tengo que desdoblar en el saludo, en primer lugar, a nombre de CONICYT, de Chile, la agencia que financia la actividad científica y tecnológica en Chile en casi un 95%. Les traigo un cordial saludo de la vicepresidenta del Consejo de CONICYT, la doctora Alejandra Misala, de nuestro director ejecutivo, Cristian Nicolai, y también del director de Relaciones Internacionales, Rodrigo Monsalve, que es mi jefe, y lamentablemente no puedo estar acá porque está viajando a Brasil a otro compromiso. Mi nombre es Patricio Espinosa, yo soy el encargado de la geográfico de Europa y África, así que por esa razón estoy a cargo dentro de CONICYT también de los programas STIC y MATH-AmSud y también de la cooperación de ECOS CONICYT, que también es otra cooperación muy grande y muy importante. En segundo término, a nombre de la Secretaría Técnica, agradecer simplemente a la Universidad Industrial de Santander, a todo el equipo, representado por su director de Relaciones Internacionales, don Carlos Vecino, porque ha sido maravilloso la recepción que hemos tenido acá, no solamente los equipos directivos, sino también los científicos acá. Agradecer también a la cooperación regional, encabezada por Leticia y todo el equipo. Es un gran equipo desplegado por toda Sudamérica, que tiene base en Chile, pero Leticia pasa recorriendo Sudamérica, así que muchas gracias a ti y a todos los otros agregados. También agradecer a la Embajada de Francia acá en Colombia, representado esta vez acá por Enrique, porque también el apoyo de ustedes ha sido fundamental en la prosecución, no solamente de este seminario, sino también de la actividad que se hace paralelamente, de las reuniones técnicas, de evaluación, de informes, etc. Solamente quiero señalar que para Chile, para CONICYT, ha sido un privilegio poder encabezar las secretarías técnicas. Este último tiempo hemos renovado nuestro compromiso, traemos varias propuestas que serán entregadas a partir de mañana. Esperamos con ansia también la retroalimentación que tanto los equipos técnicos, las diferentes agencias nos puedan entregar. Para terminar, creo que es importante destacar el rol de las agencias, no solamente de Chile, de Colombia, sino de toda Sudamérica, porque es importante el trabajo silencioso que hacen varios técnicos administrativos el día a día, el pago de los proyectos, el seguimiento técnico. Creo que es una labor que hay que destacar. Y creo que mientras estos dos mundos, que a veces no son fáciles de congeniar, el mundo científico con el mundo administrativo, pueden generar buenas relaciones de trabajo, claras, con buenas funciones, creo que va en directo beneficio de que los programas sigan creciendo y así lo esperamos. Finalmente, yo ahora sí que me despido. Me alegra mucho que tengamos una gran presencia de estudiantes. Yo creo que a todos, o por lo menos a mí, hace tiempo que no iba a un campo universitario, estaba muy encerrado en la oficina, y es verdad que es bueno ver juventud y savia nueva acá en el mundo científico y tecnológico. Muchas gracias y que sea un gran seminario.
Gracias, Patricio. Le damos la palabra al profesor Carlos Vecino.
Buenos días. Primero que todo quiero dar realmente un gran y cálido saludo a todos los que se encuentran presentes. Es muy interesante ver esta fusión entre la academia, las directivas, el gobierno, las universidades de distintos países. Obviamente es esta fusión la que nos conduce realmente a los avances que estamos teniendo. Quiero particularmente dar un saludo especial a María Eugenia Mejía, jefe de Internacionalización de Colciencias. Enrique Sánchez ya, como lo ven, habla mejor español que nosotros mismos. Ha sido realmente, Enrique, el vínculo entre la Embajada de Francia en Colombia y el sector educativo, y creo que él ha descubierto realmente el papel que podemos jugar y nos ha dado una posición privilegiada dentro de Colombia. Le queremos agradecer. Ya lo tuvimos presente en varios eventos, pero particularmente pues la semana anterior o 2 semanas atrás pues tuvimos la presencia del programa ECOSNOR y ahora tenemos a STIC-AmSud. Es realmente son dos programas que han sido muy importantes tanto financieramente como académicamente para nuestra universidad. Quiero anticipar igualmente que tendremos dentro de un mes un evento igualmente junto con Colciencias muy importante, donde tendremos la presencia de todos los ministros de lo que puede ser Colciencias, digamos, en nuestro país. Son todos los ministros que tienen que ver con la tecnología, con la innovación de la Organización de Estados Americanos. O sea, vamos a tener desde Canadá hasta Argentina, todos los ministros presentes en nuestra ciudad y en nuestra universidad en particular, como anfitriona de un evento que reúne como cumbre a todos ellos y que obviamente va a ser altamente publicitada. Me antecedió Patricio. Yo cada vez que oigo Patricio pues sé que es un chileno. En nuestro país hablamos de patriarcas, que son los que representan la patria. Entonces eso es básicamente lo que dice Patricio. Él obviamente es el secretario de este programa tan importante. Saludo nuevamente también a Renzo. Ya nos hizo la presentación de cuáles son los programas y mostró cómo ha gestado este programa importante de tecnologías de información y comunicación en Colciencias. Quiero igualmente saludar especialmente a Andu Set, presidente del Comité Científico, porque nos acompaña un gran comité científico y hay presencia de distintos países en nuestra universidad en este momento y en este auditorio en particular. En el transcurso del día también habrá otra persona que forma parte de este comité, que es el profesor José Tiberio Hernández de la Universidad de los Andes. Pues ese es el coordinador de esta colaboración de TIC entre Francia y Colombia, y pues le hago un saludo especial. Creo que Amparo ha sido igualmente un artífice importante de este crecimiento en la relación. Cada vez que se nombra la UIS o Francia, ella como Amparo Grisales se eriza. Realmente siente una emoción muy especial cuando se nombra la UIS, cuando se nombra a Francia. Creo que son las 2 palabras que le corren por las venas, además de Colombia. Entonces, nos ha servido realmente un puntal muy importante. Obviamente, Juan Camilo y Laura Ochman de Colciencias pues, nos han colaborado mucho aquí al interior de la universidad. Pues Carlos Jaime y los demás profesores han sido realmente artífices de este tipo de actividad, pero quiero dar un saludo muy especial, igualmente que mis antecesores, a los estudiantes presentes. Son los estudiantes los que en últimas van a, en el futuro, potencializar este tipo de actividades. Nuestros profesores obviamente son quienes impulsan este tipo de actividad. Obviamente todo este saludo se da en nombre de la Universidad Industrial de Santander y de nuestro rector, profesor Hernán Porras Díaz, quien estará presente mañana con el arribo de los embajadores, obviamente de nuestro embajador de Francia en Colombia, pero tendremos la presencia también de múltiples embajadores de Latinoamérica, de Francia en Latinoamérica, en diversos países. Para todos nuestros invitados, ha sido muy agradable estar aquí en la universidad. Eso es lo que están expresando y obviamente pues es algo que viene en un paquete integrado con lo que es Bucaramanga, con lo que es el área metropolitana de Bucaramanga y Santander como un todo. Así vengamos de Cartagena como ya estuvo la semana anterior. Bucaramanga, como su nombre lo dice, la ciudad bonita, pues es una ciudad muy acogedora. Colombia en general es acogedora, pero creo que Bucaramanga en particular lo es. Y la Universidad Industrial de Santander, en términos de el ente, la universidad pública, la universidad que jalona el crecimiento y el desarrollo del conocimiento en nuestra región, pues es el sitio indicado para este tipo de actividades y así hemos sido reconocidos. Vamos obviamente a dar inicio a este importante seminario científico en el que tendremos como palabras centrales, algunas de estas palabras centrales que quiero mencionar: blockchain, deep learning, quantum computing, virtual reality y obviamente la inteligencia artificial asociada a él, pues serán palabras que van a estar una y otra vez rondando este seminario. Pero tenemos la presencia obviamente de grandes científicos, profesores, expertos en la temática que nos van a mostrar y nos van a presentar realmente la importancia de estas tecnologías de la información y la comunicación. Tenemos aquí profesores y particularmente pues hay profesores de diversas escuelas de lo que llamamos ciencias y la Facultad de Ingenierías Físico-Mecánicas, a la cual está adscrita Ingeniería de Sistemas. Ya desde sus inicios hemos tenido un estrecho vínculo con Francia y pues fue esta escuela prácticamente uno de esos frutos de ese importante vínculo. Desde sus inicios, algunos importantes profesores y científicos franceses nos acompañaron en la creación de la Escuela de Ingeniería de Sistemas y siguen estando muy activos. Muchos de nuestros profesores han estado formando parte de programas como los que mencioné hace un rato, con movilidad, y Francia realmente se ha convertido en un país muy hermano con Colombia. Realmente nos estamos uniendo en proyectos muy importantes. Nace, por ejemplo, de esta hermandad el proyecto importante Colifree, que es la unión de investigadores de Colombia y Francia, que jalonará muchos proyectos. Obviamente, nuestra universidad en términos de infraestructura ofrece unos espacios interesantes. Guatiguará particularmente se ha convertido en el parque tecnológico que jalona este tipo de actividades y en cuanto a la tecnología de información y comunicación, pues además tenemos el reconocimiento con nuestro centro de alta computación, de alta velocidad y demás, es decir, todo lo que tiene que ver con la punta de la tecnología y nos es muy grato ser vistos de esta manera. Creo que es suficiente como antesala y pues no me resta sino dar nuevamente un cálido saludo a todos los participantes de este importante evento y estaremos atentos para los que no pudieron asistir, puedan tener la posibilidad de hacerlo vía streaming y así lo han planteado muchos de los que han escrito con gran entusiasmo por lograr la participación en este evento. Entonces, doy formalmente la bienvenida a este importante evento científico y continúo entonces en la palabra Juan Camilo para invitar a nuestro primer conferencista de alto nivel. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, profesor, por esas palabras. A continuación tenemos nuestra primera exposición a cargo de Patrick. Él nos va a hacer una presentación acerca de blockchain 2.0, oportunidades y riesgos.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this presentation. So I'm not sure I got everything which has been said. I understand it were nice words about technology and so on. So my presentation will show you how technology can have a very strong impact on the world. So I'm going to talk about blockchain 2.0. It's not a very technical presentation, as you will see. So the first thing I want to say is that it's typically in computer science, it's an overhyped topic. So every time you have a big hype, you have enthusiastic proponents. So for example, this economist at Harvard saying, this is a very recent article saying that the blockchain will basically do as much to the world as the internet did. So very strong impact. But you also find on the other extreme fierce opponents. Like, and this is very recent, early this month, a testimony of Rubini, who is, he's not nobody. He is professor of economics in NYU, and he was one of the few economists who predicted the 2008 financial crisis 2 years before. So people listened to him. Okay, so what's the story behind this? It all started 10 years ago, so it's very recent, with Bitcoin. It came out of the blue, out of nowhere, with a strange paper called a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, written by a strange author, Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudo, and there's a lot of stories about who that is. And he published that paper on the evening of an Halloween day. And the people behind it are not people from the academy or the university and so on. So that's also interesting to see that research and technology and impact on the world today doesn't come from researchers like me working for a national organization like INRIA. So what it is, it's a cryptocurrency and payment system. And the main thing I will talk about is blockchain, which is the most interesting thing, which is the infrastructure behind it. Okay, since it started, we had many blockchains, maybe hundreds. So famous one, Ethereum, Ripple, with some other functionality. It has been some success. It's been used a lot for high-risk investment. So for example, initial coin offerings as an alternative to initial public offerings, IPOs. So for example, a recent startup at INRIA was able to get funding very quickly. They said that it would have taken maybe 2 years to get funding, through normal capital venture. And with this model, they were able to write a white paper and to get money. Well, the bad news is that, well, I would say like everything we do, like the web, it can also be used in bad ways. So it has been used a lot in fraudulent and illegal activities for scam purchase on the dark web, money laundering, tax evasion, and so on. And since then, there have been warnings from market authorities and some beginning of regulation from the various countries, including the European Union. But the countries and the people working on it don't really understand what it is. So they completely disagree on what to do. So this is really something which is a big issue. So just as an introduction, maybe I'll just put the question, is something like blockchain the currency of tomorrow? As always, there are pros and cons. There are big pros. So for example, the biggest pro, I think, is the low transaction fee. It is set by the sender to speed up processing. I will explain how. But it's completely independent of the amount that is being transferred. So for example, someone might transfer millions of euros or dollars for a couple of euros. whereas with a regular banking system, it would cost thousands of euros or dollars. There are few ways for merchants. So, for example, because everything is very secure, there's no fraudulent chargebacks, for example. Security and control, in particular protection from identity theft, which is a big thing. And also trust. I will talk about trust later on through the blockchain. Well, the cons, and then I can refer to it's a pretty big paper by Rubini, which is in fact a testimony for the hearing in front of the US Senate Committee on this affairs. Well, the big con is that it's very unstable as a currency. And why? Because there's no backing by a state or a federal bank. So unlike, for example, euro or dollar. It's completely unrelated to the real world, to the real economy. So it's not. So it fosters speculation. It's highly volatile. So, for example, one Bitcoin today is about $6,000, but it can vary in a couple of hours. I checked that last week, between $6,000 and $7,000 dollars. And if we compare to what's happening in the currency world, is that it has a very small user base, 20 million Bitcoin wallets in different marketplaces, versus, for example, billions of users in e-payment systems like Alipay, PayPal, and all this. And since we are talking about currency, in currency you have bubbles, and there was a crypto bubble in 2017, and where there was a big increase suddenly from 1K to 10K dollars, and then it went up to 20K in December 2017 to collapse to about 6,000. So a lot of people are losing money. And so it's even worse than what's happening in the real currency. Okay, so what's blockchain? So I will start with trust. Technical part, for people who like technical matter, it's pretty complicated. It's called consensus protocols. It's been there for a long time. And then I'll be able to explain how the blockchain works at a very high level in order to introduce blockchain 2.0, some use cases, and discuss. I hope we'll have some time for discussion at the end. So trust is very important in a modern economy. So here the context is that we need to exchange assets, money or whatever, between parties in a safe way. So the typical approach is a centralized ledger. So think of, for example, you want to exchange, to do a bank transfer from Europe to Colombia. There are two different banks, two different countries, two different systems. So at some point there will be a centralized ledger managed, for example, by a clearing house. So a centralized ledger is just an account book that records all transactions and is fully controlled by a trusted authority. So the typical problems that you have in a distributed world, like internet and so on, is that with a central authority, it becomes a single point of failure. And usually, the bigger it is, the best it is for attackers. And you can just read the trade press about that. But worse than that, it favors concentration of actors. So the banks, there's been a lot of concentration of banks, buying other banks and so on. And why is that? Because the more money they have to manage, the more money they make, right? Because they charge us. But also the web giants, the GAFAM, and all the other intermediaries like Uber and so on, they exploit data, our data, private data, to make big money, okay? So with blockchain, it's completely different approach. It's a so-called peer-to-peer approach, which is pretty popular on the internet. So you have a distributed ledger. So now it is shared by all participants. So how this is done? By replication. It's fully decentralized. Very important, it's append only, so you cannot modify. You can just append data, like an accounting book. So no update, no delete. The big issue we'll discuss later on is distributed transaction validation. So we need a technique or technological consensus. And by design, it's unfalsifiable and it's verifiable because everybody who has a copy of the ledger can double check what's going on. So blockchain has some very nice properties and promises. I'm saying promises because as you will see later on, there are also big problems. So the first promise is that it will increase trust in value exchange. And the basic idea is that you trust the data, and I will explain how, but not the participants, because we are in a complicated world. There's no single point of failure. That's a very big advantage. Well, that's the same idea that was designed for internet. Remember, the internet was, well, before the internet was the ARPANET in the Cold War context, so high security. And efficient transactions between participants, which should be much faster and cheaper than using intermediaries. Because typically, these intermediaries have different rules, different systems. It's very hard to agree on that. There's a very important distinction, in fact. When you see a lot of criticism on the blockchain, it is more on the public blockchain. And as you will see later on, there are a lot of investment from industry in blockchain, but it's usually for what's called the private blockchain. So it's very important to make the difference now. So the big blockchain is the one behind Bitcoin. It's an open peer-to-peer network. So participants can join and leave without any notification. They do whatever they want. They are completely anonymous, untrusted, and the infrastructure has to be very large scale. It has to accommodate a high number of participants. A private blockchain is a closed permission networks, meaning that the participants, they are known, they are identified, they are trusted, they have an account somewhere. Not to be confused with accounts people need to have to do Bitcoin with a marketplace. There's regulated control, and it's small to medium scale distributed ledger. Okay, so a quick zoom on the technical part, called consensus protocol. So what is consensus? It's something which is used in internet or all the systems behind it for critical applications like data replication, transaction validation, identity verification, everything which is in the backbone. It's a major problem of distributed systems. The issue is how to reach consensus, meaning in case of replication, for instance, agree on the same value in the presence of a number of faulty processes. So the problem statement is given n processes and one leader, how to reach agreement, meaning all correct processes will agree on the same value. And validity, if the initiator doesn't fail, all correct processes will agree on the value. So let's focus on two major types of failures. So the major one that everybody deals with is crash, disk crash, server crash, and so on, which I think is the easy case. There's a more involved case called malicious, and it's also called Byzantine. See the next slide to understand where does it come from. Meaning the process doesn't behave rationally. It gives different values to different observers. And for those who like theory of distributed systems, there is a very important impossibility results called FLP from the authors, which is with only one crash failure, termination of the protocol is not guaranteed. And a typical example is in distributed databases where we use a protocol called two-phase commit, and if the coordinator fails in a particular state, ready state, the process cannot terminate. Okay, so in order to understand the issue, the people formalized, well, they took this metaphor of the Byzantine army for the agreement problem. So suppose we have an army of the Byzantine Empire. So you have generals with their different troops surrounding a city. And they need to communicate in order to agree on a common plan. They need to either attack or retreat, all of them. The issue is that a number of these generals may be traitor, and they may vote selectively. So, for example, you have 5 generals, 2 will support the attack, 2 will support retreat, and the 5th general, who is a traitor, can send an attack vote to the first 2 and a retreat vote to the other 2, right? Then a terrible situation will happen. So the problem formulation is to find an algorithm called consensus to ensure that loyal generals can agree on a common battle plan that everybody will follow, despite the fact that there are traitors. That's part of life. So just to make the story short, there's a basic algorithm called Paxos, which has been the basis for many protocols. So it's been invented by Leslie Lamport, who got the, in 1999, who got the ACM Turing Award years later. It's used a lot to manage large-scale distributed data, for example, at Google, at IBM, Microsoft, a Ceph distributed file system, Neo4j, an NoSQL system. And it's been inspired by, apparently, a true story of the functioning of the parliament of the Paxos Island centuries ago, where the parliament did work despite the regular absence of legislators or message lost, which can be considered as Byzantine failures. So a few words about the algorithm. It's a very complex algorithm. It would take like 2 hours in class to explain all the details. So just to make it short, there's initialization phase where a leader is elected by a majority quorum. Then there's replication. The leader replicates new updates to the majority quorum using broadcasting. In case there's a failure, a new leader is elected, and the whole process restarts again. And it's been shown that to make progress, at least half of the participants should be alive, which is not much. It's pretty good. The main limitations, besides it's quite complex to implement, but as I mentioned before on the previous slide, it's been done by big computer companies. It works only for permission settings, meaning the private blockchain. That's a very important consideration. So all participants should be known a priori, so it's not appropriate for the public blockchain. It deals only with crash failures, not with malicious nodes. And of course, progress is not guaranteed as a result of the FLP impossibility. So there is some, I would say, a better algorithm from Castro and Liskov from MIT in 1999 called Practical Byzantine Fault Tolerance, which is a 3-phase protocol which deals with Byzantine failures. So there's a prepare phase, a prepare, and a commit phase, which I'm not discussing now, but the main thing is that it requires 2/3 of the nodes to agree in the previous phase in order for the protocol to terminate. Okay, so now I can explain a little bit more how the blockchain works. It's fairly complicated. Just my review of the Nakamoto paper. It's a very short paper, 10-page paper. It's very well done. It has a vision that the technology will work until 2040. And then it will not work anymore. So it's pretty great. It's pretty rare, even in big computer conferences, that you see papers with so much impact. Okay, so I start with the concept, blockchain. So it's an immutable distributed database. Oops, I'm sorry. It's an immutable distributed database, meaning a log of blocks. And these blocks are linked in the order of production and replicated on the so-called full nodes. Full nodes, I'll explain later. But they have a full copy of the blockchain. A block is a container, a digital container for transactions, but also contracts, property titles, whatever you want to do with it. And they are secured using public key encryption. This is not new. What's very important is the code of each new block is built on that of the preceding block using some hash functions. So this, by design, guarantees that you cannot change a block after the fact. And by the way, this was very important because before Bitcoin, there were other cryptocurrencies, and they all suffered from the double spending problem, which has been solved here. So the blockchain is viewed by all participants, so this allows to validate the entries in the blocks, and there is privacy. Users are pseudonymized. Okay, so I'll explain the protocol as in the paper with some more explanations. So there are a number of steps. So there's step 0 where the full nodes get initialized. So at the beginning of the blockchain, everybody with a PC could get the blockchain. Well, today it's still possible, but it doesn't make much sense. The size of the blockchain today is 185 gigabytes, not that big, but it's not that small. Now, if two users agree on a transaction, they exchange some information, wallet addresses, public keys, and so on. Each public key encryption, I'm not explaining, but each participant has a private key, a secret key in the pocket. This is very important because sometimes people lose their secret keys and they lose everything. There's grouping of transactions in the block and validations. This is called mining. I'll discuss later on. This is a big thing. And then the block is, when it has been validated, it is added in the blockchain and replicated. I'll explain later why, but you need some time to have the transaction to be confirmed. It is not, although it has been validated, it is not yet fully confirmed. So here's an example of transaction, which you can do with a browser. So this transaction is, if you take one Bitcoin, $6,000, it's $80,000 with $1.2 fee. So it's very little. So the transactions are chain. So the history is represented here. And how is this done? Well, the coin owner, the one who is sending the money, creates a hash value based on the previous transaction, some information, and the public key of the next owner. And all this is signed with its private key. Okay. So this is highly protected. And then you have block management, so multiple transactions which are linked together. They are placed into blocks, and the blocks are also linked together. So the validation of a block is meaning checking input, outputs. In fact, the node which is checking can check the whole history there. So important aspect, which is in the design of the Bitcoin, the size of the block is 1 megabyte. It's been a big issue. People are saying, well, we could make it bigger. It would increase throughput. But then other people are saying it will decrease security. So this is a big discussion about that. So each block is linked with the previous block. There's a hash value, very similar, well, not the same, but the way the transactions are linked. So it means you cannot undo it. And there is also the nonce, which I'll explain later, which is something very hard to do, to compute. So validation by the network. So this is very important because you have the specific nodes called miners, which will implement the consensus protocol. So at the beginning of the history of the blockchain, anybody with a PC could be a miner. But as I'll explain later, you need a lot of, the computing power needed to do the mining is proportional to the network. As the Bitcoin network becomes bigger, it takes more and more time. So you need bigger and bigger machines. So now, today, it's impossible to do that. But I have people in my group, for example, who used to be miners. They even make some big money. And they lost the keys, so they lost all the money. So this is the kind of world we are in. We are in a distributed system, and in the distributed system, there are different things which happen. There's no common view of what's happening, right? There's no centralized view because it's distributed. even time zones, are different. So one node can see several candidate chains. So at some point, you may end up one block has been validated, and then another block, and then two blocks in parallel, block 7A and 6B, they are validated by different miners. And since with the protocols they can get some majority, it gets validated. Which is a problem because we are not talking about a chain, we are talking about a tree. So there's a very simple solution which is called the longest chain rule, which is when a node needs to add a block and gets the situation, it will pick the longest chain, meaning it will not use block 6B to put the new block, okay? Meaning the block 6B at some point will disappear. What happens with the transaction in the block? Well, probably some of them are in block 7A because it's completely independent, or they will be in block in the next block, okay? So this is very important. This is why, although transaction is in a validated block and is validated, it's only provisionally validated. It needs to get confirmation, which is kind of new. Right? And just to finish about forking, because this is an important topic, this is accidental fork I just discussed. There is also intentional fork. The main issue is that there's something working, and then there's code, and people want to change the code. So that's, you cannot stop the system, And since it's fully decentralized, it's not like when you have a centralized authority, whatever. Facebook, for example, which will say, well, from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., we'll stop everything, and we'll produce a new version. This is not possible, okay? So to add new feature to the blockchain, and which means new software, we need to have fork. Or also when there are bugs or hacking. So two kinds of fork, soft, which is backward compatible, but it's not really secure, and hard. So the hard is probably the best one, meaning the old software recognizes blocks created with new rules as invalid. And just to give you an example, there's a famous battle between a fork, intentional fork, in Ethereum. Ethereum is the #2 currency in 2016. And today, the fork has not been resolved. In fact, if you look at the currencies, there are two currencies. New Ethereum, which is, well, we don't say new anymore, and Ethereum Classic, which is the old one. And why is that? Because in 2016, there was an attack against some application, which is a complex smart contract for venture capital. And it was, as a result, to correct, some transactions were invalidated. To do the correction, there was a fork, but the community doing the open source software doesn't agree on what to do, and they still disagree, and there are two camps. But it's very much like political parties, they split, sometimes they merge, and maybe at some point they will merge again. Okay, so a little bit of technical stuff. So the consensus protocol in the blockchain for Bitcoin is called mining. So why not Paxos or something which has been there for 20 years? Well, remember here, participants are unknown. So to validate the block, miner nodes, they compete as in a lottery to produce a nonce. A nonce means a number used once. It's used a lot in security systems. And one of the first competing solutions is selected. Selected by whom? By all the participants, right? So there are many messages exchanges. And for example, the solution will be to take the block which has the largest number of transactions. The miner who wins the lottery gets paid. So today, for example, if you mine one block is about 1,000 transactions, you will make 12.5 Bitcoins. multiplied by $6,000. So it's quite a bit money. Yeah. But today you cannot do it with my computer. You need a big data center to do that. And now they are building data centers in Iceland because it's easier for cooling. So this is becoming a big issue. So the very interesting aspect, I think it's beautiful. In the first release of the Bitcoin, because the network was very small, the incentive for mining was much higher. So it was 50 Bitcoins. But of course, if you want to convert Bitcoins to real world currency, it was much less. So this, in a way, is how the money supply increases. So it keeps increasing. Right? The Bitcoin system is a system where the money keeps getting more and more until 2040. I could not explain, it takes too long why, but it's been designed that way. If you take Bitcoin and transfer, convert your Bitcoin to US dollars, you will get US dollars, but your Bitcoin will stay in the system, right? Because you will have to sell to someone who will buy your Bitcoins. Marketplace. Okay, so in order to do it safely and in a secured way, mining has been designed to be difficult by construction. And the rationale is that the more mining power the network has, the harder it is to compute the nodes. And why is that? Well, it's because like in any inflationary system, you need to control inflation. So this guarantees that on average there is one block which is validated every 10 minutes. But we could have done a system where one block could be validated every second or every millisecond, in which case the system would be unbearable. So anyway, this advantage is powerful nodes. So how mining works? There's some so-called mining difficulty. So they use a known concept called proof of work. Proof of work is a piece of data that is very hard to compute, but easy to verify. So think of this. If I give you the result of this Rubik cube, it becomes obvious that it's correct, right? So it has been used a lot for preventing denial of service attacks. So in the case of Bitcoin, they use the hash cache proof of work, which is based on a hash function. So the goal is to produce a value v such that the h of v is less than t. Where? So h is a hash function. It's SHA 256 bits from the NSA. It's a well-known hash function used for cryptography. T is a target value. So T, you can find the value of T on the web. It is shared by all nodes, and it's constantly updated to reflect the size of the network. And V is a 256-bit number, starting with n 0 bits. And so the more 0 bits, the less probability of success. Probability of success is 1/2 to the n. There's a famous caveat called the 51% attack. It's also called Goldfinger. We are in the mining business. Goldfinger attack, which enables the attacker to invalidate valid transactions and double spend funds. So this is because of the longest chain rule. So how can this work? If you assume that one of the miners gets more than 50% of the total computing power, or if there's a miners coalition, so people agree to work together to do the mining for one block, it then becomes possible to modify a chain that is received by removing a transaction and produce a longer chain that will be selected by the majority. There's no technical solution. So the only solution for that is monitoring. So for example, there was one event in 2014 where a big marketplace in Japan, Gash.io, reached 42% of the computing power. Then there was a Bitcoin community alert, and then people dropped out of the marketplace to avoid this problem. Okay, so the final thing is that transaction confirmation, we need to wait sometimes. So how is this done? Well, in case of blockchain, transaction will be considered mature after 6 confirmations. The average time is 10 minutes for one transaction, so it should be about an hour, which is different for the new Bitcoins, those which are produced as a result of mining. They are valid after 120 confirmation, and this is because it gets more tricky. You want to avoid the 51% attack. Okay. So as you can tell, this is a very short introduction. It has a lot of involved technology. It's a combination of several things together and makes it quite complex and still has some important limitations. So the biggest limitation are complexity and scalability. But that's because it's hard to change the code in a peer-to-peer environment, which has been the case in peer-to-peer applications anyway. Some people claim the increasing chain size, it keeps increasing, but I don't think it's a problem because it's a log, so at some point, you may want to drop the early transaction because they are not very useful. The big issue is scalability and performance. So the throughput in terms of transaction per second is very low. It's like 5 to 7, because it's based on mining, and so it's 5 to 7 transactions per second versus 25,000, for example, in a system like Visa. Although the average time is 10 minutes, it can be also days, depending on what's happening during the day. So it's very unpredictable. The major problem is cost, because the cost of mining, for example, last year, the energy consumption was that of a medium-sized, a small country like Ireland. It also favors concentration of miners. There's an issue about you are not fully anonymized, only pseudonymized. So if you do a transaction with a participant, because of the history, you will reveal all your other transactions. So because the person will probably know who you are, will know your whole life. In fact, this is how we know that Nakamoto, who was the first miner who did the first 50 Bitcoin transaction, is a billionaire in terms of Bitcoin because he used to do mining at the early stage, right? So if this guy gets out of the system, he never did, he will be known, and that's also a lot of speculation. And because it's peer-to-peer, it's hard to control and regulate for countries. Okay, so that's blockchain 1.0. So what about 2.0? So 1.0 is very simple. Bob and Sally, which engage in a buyer-seller transaction, can just transfer money. Whereas with blockchain 2.0, I don't have a microphone. The interesting thing is that there's programming. So people can program application. So just to give you an idea, it's as powerful as the fact that on a smartphone, anybody can write applications. So when it started, Apple was the first to do this, to have the App Store and to allow people to do application. An appliance which was just to call people became just a platform. So it's going to become the same here. So you have APIs, programming language, scripts, and so on. So it's really a big transition beyond Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Everything where you need to record and exchange assets without intermediaries. So one example I will describe is smart contracts. And the positioning on the internet is that, well, on the internet, TCP/IP was a communication protocol which allows any machine to communicate with any machine. And blockchain would be the value exchange protocol. I put a question mark because there's not one blockchain. There are hundreds of blockchains, so that's another issue. Okay, so a few words about the technology. in fact, it started with Ethereum. So Ethereum is pretty cool technology. It allows application developers to build APIs on the blockchain protocol. And so, for example, you would find APIs to allocate digital resources to connected devices. One is called Filecoin. But you have APIs for micropayments as well. So in the case of the private blockchain, it becomes very interesting because in the private blockchain, you can have, you don't need mining, you don't need proof of work, you can have efficient transaction validation, right? Because the participants have been trusted before. And the private blockchain doesn't need to be fully decentralized. In fact, most private blockchains are managed in the cloud, like anything else. So there's been major interest from industry players. IBM is probably number one, but you have all the financial services, audit firms, web giants, and you even have, well, so of course, technology platforms, because you need to sell a lot of technology to do that, and ISV, blockchain, etc. So one major use case for the blockchain 2.0 is smart contracts. So if you know, Lawrence Lessig is a very important professor of law at Harvard. He wrote many books about open source software, about all this. In fact, we had a meeting in Toulouse. In Toulouse, we have a very famous economist, Jean Tirole, who got a Nobel Prize, and he organized a school. I was there, and Lawrence Lessig was giving a talk. And he said recently that code is low. That's very, very important. In fact, the main reason I got into the blockchain, I'm not doing yet research into the blockchain, I'm going to do next, is that because people from the law school in Montpellier, they were looking for someone to explain the blockchain in technical terms, and they couldn't find any, and I could not find any in Montpellier, so I just say, well, it shouldn't be hard. I was very arrogant. I said it shouldn't be hard, it would take me a couple of days, because I know distributed database. I've written books on the topic. Well, not at all. It's very, very difficult to get to understand. So anyway, one big thing is smart contract, which has been invented years ago. It's a self-executing contract with code. And the early application was digital rights management schemes. And in the blockchain 2.0, you may have unknown participants to each other, and contracts can be with many third parties. So for example, a major use case, but I'm not seeing it yet, but I was seeing this mentioning by a presentation on what kind of research is being done in Colombia. It was mentioning IoT. IoT is a big challenge, and you may imagine at some point that the IoT devices will be communicating through a blockchain to do smart contracts. But there are big challenges, right? Because if code is low, you need code which is bug-free, and this is very hard to do. You know, if you go to an airplane, there's a lot of code, and this code has been certified. It took years and years of certification. People use formal methods, they use all kinds of tools. In the kind of the blockchain, people write code in Python, right? And who knows Python? All the young people here. Yeah, not the majority, but oh yeah, okay. So most of the young people, they all know Python, right? Python is as exponential growth. It's a very simple object-oriented programming language, which is scripting language. And it allows to, so people who don't want to invest too much into programming techniques and so on, like in Java or C++ and so on, they would use Python. But the problem is that it's an untyped language, so it's much harder to verify. So anyway, this is becoming a major issue, how to produce bug-free code, because then if code is low, then what will be implemented will be completely obscure. And also, it requires programmers and lawyers to work together. And I can tell you, these are two different worlds. I'm more a programmer. My daughter is a lawyer. Discussion is pretty hard. Okay, so a famous project is Hyperledger from the Linux Foundation that has been started by IBM and many others. So it provides open source blockchains and tools, for example, Hyperledger Fabric, which is very interesting with configurable consensus. So for example, you can have PB, FT, and others. Intel, who is adding specific hardware for security, is adding a new consensus based on a trusted execution environment, and so on. This is a nice summary of all the use cases, so you can see that they are mostly in terms of securities, in terms of money management, smart contract, digital currency, and record keeping. So what are the characteristics of the 2.0 applications? Of course, asset and value need to be exchanged, otherwise it's completely useless. I see people doing blockchain projects for something where they don't need blockchain, they just need a good database. You know? So be careful. Blockchain is everywhere. That's a problem. So multiple participants who can be unknown to each other, and trust needs to be critical. So top use cases are in financial services, digital right, digital identity. This is becoming a big issue. IBM is showing that the digital identity centralized platforms are subject to massive attacks, and then with a lot of consequences. Supply chain management, I will give you an example in a moment, and Internet of Things. Internet of Things is the next big thing for me, which I'm going to work on. So there are POCs, proof of concepts in many industries. So just to give you an example, this is diamond supply chain management. So the problem is how to trace diamonds. They come from countries in a situation of war. In an era of blood diamonds. You've all seen the movie, I guess. If not, you should see the movie. It's a very complex and multi-tiered diamond and jewelry supply chain. So the objective of this project is to provide trusted products with documented authenticity. So, for example, if someone buys a diamond, should know that it comes from something which is eco quality. So this is being done by IBM with some participants in this business. And IBM is doing a big one now with Walmart. Walmart is the #1 company in the world, actually, for retail, to trace all the products. So it's a huge project. Okay, so time for discussion. So there are opportunities, but there are also risks. So I guess the opportunities is, first of all, it's a disruptive technology. It has a lot of potential. In particular, the ability to program application and logic in the blockchain. So one example is smart contracts. But, well, also, it has a potential of disruptive power. And this is very interesting. In fact, the people behind the Bitcoin are the so-called cypherpunk activists. You know, these are people with libertarian ideal that you should not trust the government, you should not trust the countries that are all cheating about you. And, but by people together, we can do a better democracy. This is having a lot of impact. Okay, so democracy and equality, especially, for example, for small businesses to compete with big companies, but also in countries which are not too nice with their people, you know. Okay, so there are big risks, and I'll discuss the research issues in a moment. So the main one which scares all the people in the financial industry is market disruption, because it would end up with a massive disintermediation of the current system, which, by the way, is underway with data science. and all this machine learning that we will learn about it. For example, in France, the banking industry is going to lose 300,000 jobs, people being replaced by so-called AIs. So it's the same kind of thing. And for the public blockchain, I already talked about this. Well, one of the major things is consumer protection. Of course, around the blockchain, there are marketplaces, but they don't really protect the consumers. And of course, like the web and the dark web, there is increased use for illegal activities. Security concern, if you lose your private key, you lose everything. And you have no recourse because there's no backing from the government like in a regular bank. Well, at least in Europe, because I know, having lived in different countries, it's not the case in any country that if the bank has a problem, you will get back your money anyway. Sometimes the country just steals out the money from the people. Okay, so there are research issues. So that was very interesting because I was at VLDB, this is a major database conference in Rio de Janeiro in last August, and there were keynotes and tutorials on the blockchain. And although it has been done by people who are not in the world of research, but people who understand the research, of course. Now the researchers are trying to catch up with it. So you will see a lot of alternatives, for example, in order to solve the scalability problems, alternative to proof of work. So there's a famous proof of stake, which is being promised in Ethereum. But it introduced new problems. So it's very interesting, is that when you have a technology which is very good on different dimensions, you try to replace it by a new technology which is supposed to be better on some dimension, but it will lose on some other dimension, and it's typical. So for example, proof of stake means that the miner needs to prove a possession of a pretty good amount of currency. It's like having a blocked account. So, of course, it's going to be much faster to do the computation, but it will benefit rich nodes, and it will be less secure. So there are other, for example, people from Rutgers University proposed recently the Bitcoin new generation blockchain. So in terms of smart contracts, I already mentioned this, but the major issue is to do code certification and verification, and the people working in this area are not really working with the other people. Blockchain, will it be the infrastructure of the future? Well, blockchain is now a concept. It's not one infrastructure. There are about 100 different blockchains today. And there is now a blockchain interoperability alliance to promote cross-blockchain transactions. So you can exchange Bitcoins from Ethereum and so on. My background is more on big data, and I found pretty good, big data and machine learning and all this, and there are pretty good use cases to put the two together, because blockchain-generated data, transaction data, can be analyzed, for example, to do fraud prevention based on real-time transactions. So there's blockchain, BigChainDB, which is a blockchain-based database management systems. Okay, last slide, and I will be done. Well, like I said, like the web and like machine learning and all this, it can have strong impact on the world. It is having strong impact on the world, but that impact can be good or bad. So remember, the public blockchain is great for criminals, but everything you do which is useful will be used in a way by criminals. But this has become very important in the research community. Like, for example, these are called ethical issues. And at VLDB, I went to a panel called a Debate on Data and Algorithmic Ethics. So people like us who do research should not just think that we do research to solve problems. We do research to improve the world. This is very different. So we need to understand what ethics mean. And talking to a lot of my students, understand that they didn't read about ethics, so I always tell them to read Spinoza, who did this long time ago. Okay, so end of the story. Thank you. So I did 53 minutes, so we have 5-10 minutes for questions. I had 1 hour. Question, comments, whatever? Is there any blockchain development in Colombia, for example, or South America? I'm sure there is. I gave this conference in Africa, and there were many blockchains already there. Don't be shy.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I actually have a question about ripples, because it seems that they are able to perform like transactions that are faster than the Visa system, so they claim. So I'm wondering how they can manage that with the collaborative ledger.
Yeah, actually, there are many alternatives to the Bitcoin blockchain. So I don't know this one particularly, but if you put everything, all the machines in the cloud, and so if you use similar technology, at some point you can be even faster than the top system. But the real question is, do you provide all the same properties? And I'm sure it's not. So that's, as I say, there are many new alternatives that try to beat this, especially the Bitcoin blockchain on some dimension, and they lose on some others. So, and usually the one that they lose on is security. Visa has no problem because everything has been secure upfront. Okay, and in fact, it's unfair when I do this comparison, which I took, because with Visa they process transactions, but once everything has been authenticated and so on, so there's upfront work which is not part of it.
I actually have a second question,
sure,
if it's okay. How do you think the adoption of such technologies can be made state-wise? Because I saw that, for instance, the Chinese government were looking into maybe adopting Bitcoins. So do you think that one day we will see Bitcoin in the bus?
So that's a very good question, which is almost beyond my level of expertise, but Rubini talks about that. So there are different currencies, and so the most stable currencies in the world are dollars or euro, and the problem of the Chinese currency is it's not very stable, and in fact they are the most important providers of mining power is in China. It used to be in Japan and also in Asia. It's a way to compete with the others. So there are many things, but it makes sense. It makes sense if there is because you have to distinguish the technology, how it is used. So initially, it's completely out of the control of the government, and in fact, it's a point that this economist is making, is that in the end, the way it's going, it will become fully controlled by some state and China, and which is the main evil for the US from a business point of view, and centralized, because that's, if it's controlled, then you can put all the power in a cloud data center. So there are many issues like that. What I think, which is, it's already happening in Africa. In Africa, well, the French, ex-French colonies like Cameroon and Benin and so on, they have a dependency on the French, well, on the euro, but it used to call franc CFA. It's an old story, and it means that people cannot really trust the money with the government, and they are doing alternatives. So this will become stronger and stronger as well. Okay, so yes, definitely we have to watch. It's in the beginning of regulation. In Europe, for example, there's a regulation that now the marketplaces must be able to well, especially because Europe is very concerned about money from terrorism, because terrorists, of course, they use this, and how to identify them, so this is through the marketplaces. But as a result, the marketplaces, they don't have locations in Europe, they go to other countries. So it pushes the limits of how can the technology will push all the democratic systems to the limit. And that's going to be very interesting. So all the young people who are in this room, you will have impact on the world. So be careful the way you do it. But it's a dream of many opponents to a dictator and so on. You can do a lot with this. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Just in time.
Gracias, Patrick, por esa presentación. Ahora tenemos un coffee break de alrededor de unos 15 minutos. Estamos un poco como sobre el tiempo. Entonces, si bien pueden, podemos salir y volver en 15 minutos. Muchas gracias. ¿Quieres?